Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 234. We have a fun and interesting episode for you today, featuring Mike Pekovich and Barry Dima. For some reason, we talk a lot about animated movies and video games in this episode. It's probably got a lot to do with Barry's presence. Before that, I want to let everyone know that we've started to release episodes of our newest video workshop featuring Raleigh Johnson, rehabbing hand planes, vintage hand planes, taking them, cleaning them up, making them perform good as new. So head on over to finewoodworking.com and check that out. I also want to let everyone know that be on the lookout later in this episode for details on a giveaway from TailSpin Tools for the listeners of Shop Talk Live. Fun episode for you. Hope you enjoy it. Here is Mike, Barry, and me. Let's just jump into this first question.
Let's do it.
Which, Mike, it should seem familiar. We tried to answer this question a couple of times, and due to technical problems, we were not able to. And yes. On that accord, everybody still rolling?
Yes. Yes, 4 minutes, okay. 35 seconds.
All right. All right, so we're trying new equipment, everybody. Fingers crossed. This has got to work. Question number 1 is from Ariel. There are TV shows with sets that have great furniture. One great example is Frasier, and another with a very different style is the Gilmore Girls, especially the grandparents' house. I'm sure there are many others, and probably movies as well, but what are some of the favorites of the STL crew? This is a lunchtime conversation that we should be having over tacos.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for you, Barry?
Oh, so much. This topic is the occasion of my first interaction with Wilbur Pan. And so like 2014, like before I was at the magazine, and I still do, but I religiously was up on Wilbur's blog, which is a Tumblr dedicated to Japanese tools. Mm-hmm. And one night I'm watching the movie Big Hero 6, because it's a sweet movie.
Great movie.
And there was brothers, and in their bedroom, they had like this really chunky bed. And on the second or third watch, I noticed the bed, and it was full of Japanese joinery. And I was like, oh! I don't know why I thought I had to tell Wilbur about this. But he might have been posting about like staked furniture that he saw on Game of Thrones. I forget. But I'm like, Wilbur, look at this. And I took a little cell phone photo of the TV screen. And then he posted it on his blog.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
Exactly. So so I geeked out when I met Wilbur at my first live. I'm like, hey, Wilbur, remember that guy with Big Hero 6? That's me. And he just quickly walked away.
So this is an animated movie.
It's like digital animation, like a Pixar thing.
Yeah.
But I can't help but even playing video games where like maybe I'm more engaged than watching a movie. I can't help but like look at the background furniture. You know, like, oh, what's going on over there? Yeah, the first piece of that like really complex piece was based off of something from Minecraft, which is when I learned that video game furniture is not built like real furniture. And so I'm like, wait, how am I going to make it look like this without it like blowing up? And so I'm very, very into like getting distracted in movies, TV shows, video games by the background furniture.
I think animated films or cartoons are really good sources. Even like kids, remember watching cartoons with the kids, and Winnie the Pooh or was it Franklin? One was a bear and one was the turtle.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Franklin. Anyway, always looking at the furniture there. Your reference made me think about the Studio Ghibli movies. For there, a lot of it is more about architecture, but there are some cool furniture because the director, producer, Miyazaki, he often like referenced other places and sort of time periods in the locales and tended to mix them all up. So like Kiki's Delivery Service, it feels like very quaint European town, but then there's like some modern factories and stuff, but it's all filtered through like a really different sensibility. And a lot of the furniture, especially the architecture, but a lot of furniture too, it sort of it references a specific style, whether it could be sort of a 50s modern or a period French furniture, but always with a weird little twist. So I really like that. And one movie, Brave, about the girl who turns her mom into a bear, which is really horrific, but it works out okay in the end, in case you were wondering. Actually, I made a little wall cabinet based on the furniture in that movie. So that's my Brave cabinet with some little chip carving on the shelves and weird diamond-shaped poles and tenons and stuff.
I didn't know that was inspired by Brave. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I actually showed that. I think it might have been the first Fine Woodworking Live where some of the presenters and maybe, I guess, staff members, because I did, were asked to present some of their furniture to talk about their design evolution. And so my college stuff was, kind of, more out there, what you would think of as studio furniture. And one of the more recent pieces I made was this little Brave cabinet. And someone, it may have been Asa, said, yeah, during your presentation, Michael Fortune said, I kind of like the old stuff better.
Michael Fortune hates cartoons. It's common knowledge.
Yeah. So I felt bad that I disappointed Michael Fortune, but I was like super excited about this one piece. And it sort of was one of the key transitional pieces that have led to like everything I've made since then. So.
And I don't think it's accidental, like our distraction with the background, because definitely Studio Ghibli, and I think Brave specifically, I remember watching like how it was made and how the illustrators are really laboriously poring over source material, reference material to like make sure the background doesn't just look generically medieval European, but like it's this geographic region, it's this century. But then, like Mike, you said, they still need to make it fit aesthetically into their movie, which is like a computer. And so you get that tweak, that like extra little bit of interest.
Yeah. I find that movies, live action, it's better utilizing things that already exist, like Back to the Future, like Doc's lab. That was like the carriage house at the Gamble House, basically the garage at the Gamble House. And another Green and Green house was used as the base and the interior set for Zathura, where kids are in a house. It's like Jumanji, except the house goes into space, and a lot of bad things happen there too. Kids movies are like absolutely horrific.
Terrifying.
Yeah. So there's like a ton of, it's funny how the Green and Green locales tend to get used. It seems like fairly often. So it's always fun to see that.
Do you think that that's because they never, like Green and Green never fully infiltrated common society? Or, like you don't see Green and Green pieces in a place unless they're a Green and Green person. Or there's no knockoffs. Like there's knockoff Stickley stuff.
Right.
There's, everybody's parents has that knockoff arts and crafts something over there that isn't real, and it's one or two generations removed. That didn't happen with Green and Green. So it looks familiar, but imaginative at the same time.
Yeah. I think people like it. I mean, Steven Spielberg was a big fan of arts and crafts furniture. Barbra
he's
Streisand.
A very common guy.
He's an everyman, if I had to name one.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's not something you see out and about.
Yeah.
So it's special when you see it on a film set. To me.
Yeah.
I find that whenever I'm distracted by furniture or architecture in a movie, it's usually like Elf. The apartment in Elf is fantastic. The millwork and the furniture, it's very, arts and crafts, very lot of actual Stickley pieces, I believe. And the millwork, the doors, I just love all of that. in there.
James
And-
Caan's
Yes.
Caan's apartment. Okay.
Yeah. But what was the other one? Oh, the first movie, and it might have been before I was even a woodworker, but I remember thinking, look at that desk. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. That had fantastic furniture.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I bet. Yeah, that's like the perfect time period.
Yeah.
I barely made it through that movie, but yeah,
I love that movie.
I watched it on a tiny airport on a tiny tablet or like laptop.
You couldn't see the furniture. That was
in
the problem.
Malaysia. It was like, I just want to get on the plane and go home. You know, like that movie must be perfect though.
Yeah. Period pieces though are great. Right now we're rewatching Turn, the AMC show.
Yeah.
And all the Windsor chairs and everything in that and it's interesting because watching that after talking to as many Windsor makers as we do, and the reverence for the sackback, and seeing how the sackback is just everywhere in that movie. And it's just like, yes, now I kind of get it, you know?
I mean, Game of Thrones had some decent furniture. They had, again, good architectural stuff, big doors with, wrought iron hardware and that kind of stuff. Probably one of the biggest disappointments for me, because I was really excited about making, Hobbit themed furniture, is I thought, the Hobbit, when that comes out, that's going to have awesome furniture. And it was kind of weak because I think they actually had to have pieces made for it, or they just found stuff. Okay, this kind of looks like it'd be Hobbit furniture. It's like, you missed the mark on that. So I was super disappointed.
Yeah, that's such an opportunity.
I did find out actually last night, and I knew these existed, but it was always sort of like bootleg download stuff, so I was never able to watch one. But I guess there's a number of Hobbit edits out there, which turn it from a 3-movie saga into a 3-hour movie where people take out every non-book related scene and storyline from it and just stick it all back together and that's, actually I saw it the other night, but it was 3 hours and it was 10 o'clock at night. So I didn't want to get started on that. But,
Mike's going to do a hobby or a Hobbit furniture edit.
Yes.
And it's going to only include the nice pieces from the Hobbit.
Let's get that SIP.
That's officially the end of that question. Before we move in together, I keep forgetting to do this giveaway. We used to do giveaways, and we're going to do giveaways every now and then. And the folks over at TailSpin Tools, I'm going to try and explain this, and it's not going to work. I think you've seen the video, Barry, right? Mm-hmm. Of how these work. They are collinear dovetail marking gauges. And basically they're like high-tech dovetail marking gauges. There's an offset built in. And with this system, you got to check out the video. Just go to the website, to the show notes. I'll have a link to the video. Basically you can lay out your tailboard and your pinboard at the same time. And it takes a time or two of watching the video on their site to wrap your head around what's going on. But they are going to give away. I was emailing with him because I was doing a blog on these, and he said, "Hey, let me send you some of these to send out to podcast listeners." So they're going to give away like 3 sets of their tools. Cool. 3 sets of their tools to podcast listeners. So head over to the show notes, shoptalklive.com, the show notes on this episode, and we'll run it for like 2 weeks. I'll have the rules and stuff in there. And leave a comment and tell us the next dovetail piece you want to work on in the comments. And the folks over at TailSpin Tools are going to give away 3 sets of their tools. So it's really cool. It's like you could use them as a dovetail marker. You could, if you wanted to, or you could use them as like this really next level offset, perfect dovetail layout thing. It's impossible to explain audio only. I apologize.
I don't know. Yeah, we got to give out more free stuff. That's fun.
Yeah, we were doing that for a while, and I had almost forgotten about it until Miko mentioned it to me, and it was like, yeah, let's do that, and let's try and do it more. So
I think when we were given 57 sets of the little hockey pucks to give out, I think that kind of killed it.
That was before me, I think. Yeah. There was a time when I used to just give away stuff from my desk. Because like in the cubicles, there's like, fine woodworking randomness that just comes with your cubicle. And it was like, I don't want this DVD. Maybe somebody else does.
There you go.
So we should bring that up again.
Yeah, that's fun.
All right. Let's see. Question number 2. This one is a saga from Todd. I'm flattening the back of my PMV11 plane iron. I typically go 1K waterstone to 6K waterstone to my 8K Shapton glass stone. However, I've never really achieved that nice mirror finish on the back like I've seen in the magazines, as well as taking a class with Garrett Hack. First off, you're never going to get as sharp as Garrett Hack. There's like unicorn pee or something that like sprinkles or like, I don't know what's going on, but if you ever heard his hand planes, they're sharper than yours. Everyone's.
He doesn't have water stones. He has unicorn pea stones. Like that's the first hurdle you have to.
Yes. All right. So back to Todd. Sorry. Last night I used 1K to 4K Norton combo, 6K King, 8K Norton combo, 8K Shapton glass stone to see if I can learn more about these stones. I like where his head's at. And if I could get a minimal scratch pattern and perhaps that elusive mirror finish. I found that going from 1K to 4K was pretty close to a mirror finish near the cutting edge. Going to 6K took it back a step. Thinking that different brands' stones might have different grit ratings, I returned to the 4K stone and got close to a mirror finish again. I flipped the Norton to the 8K side, and like the 6K, the scratch pattern using the 8K seemed cloudier. Again, returning to the 4K, I was confused by the mirror finish. Lastly, I went to the 8K Shapton glass stone. And yet again, it seemed like a step backwards compared to the 4K. I can understand differences in manufacturers and their grit scale, but I'm really puzzled by why the 4K is more mirror-like. I notice when using the 4K, it removes a lot of steel, then makes a slurry that I can push and pull the plane blade through easily. The higher grits don't seem to make the slurry that quickly, and sometimes the blade suctions to the stone, making it difficult to move. I frequently flatten the water stones, so they should be flat and with fresh abrasions. I'm starting to wonder if 4K is the new 16K. So, what gives?
Okay, number one, don't worry too much about it. It happens. It was explained to me one time, I think Andrew Hunter explained it to me, how you can go from shiny to dull, but, in terms of reflection, but still be flatter. And the way he described it was that you can, think of that 4,000 grit surface as being like super flat surface. That's where you get shiny. But there's obviously a scratch pattern there. So just think of like a hard, flat surface with some, relatively speaking, fairly deep scratches. And then as you're going to a finer stone, you're abrading that surface. So you're kind of reconciling the scratches with the flat, and you're actually getting microscopically more of an undulating surface as you're, in essence, removing those heavy scratches. And that uneven surface, even though it's a finer surface, it can be cloudier. I also don't know about PMV11, whether that truly gets like super shiny or not. But that said, again, don't worry too much about it. It just, if you're mixing grits, that will be, that can throw you off. But if you're ending up with a Shapton 8000. Do you have a Norton 8000 as well?
He had a Norton 8K and a Shapton.
Okay. So 8K. Shapton 8. So of everything, the Norton 8K is going to be the finest grit. Actually, it could be comparable to the 6000 Kingstone. Could be up there as well. The Shapton at the equivalent size as the Norton is going to be a little bit coarser, meaning the 8000 Shapton is actually a little bit coarser than the 8000 Norton, which confuses things even more. The main thing I'm coming away with is you're spending a lot of time on the back of your plane iron, and that is not a good thing because fundamentally speaking, there's, flat and smooth. we often think of those either in tandem or interchangeable, and they're not. They're two completely different things. And that, let's say, smooth is the absence of, scratches, whereas flat is a geometric flat. And in terms of being able to remove the burr once you hone the edge of a plane iron or a chisel, it's imperative that the back is flat. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get the contact you need with the stone in order to remove that burr and get truly sharp. So, is the more you work to smooth the back, the more I'm afraid you're taking that out of flat. Especially with water stones, as they sharpen, they wear out. And as they wear out, they go out of flat. They're designed to. So the king stones are going to be the softest. The Nortons are going to be the next hardest, and the Shaptons are much harder. So that it is going to stay flatter longer. But the bottom line is, and also as you're doing a really broad surface like the back of a wide chisel or plane iron, you're putting a lot of wear on that stone, and that's a lot of material that you're really working. So, for a new, especially if it's a Lee Nielsen Veritas, they do such a good job that you can trust that the back is super flat, and they've also done a really good job to make it fairly smooth. Like the back of a Veritas blade, it'll still look frosty. Call it flat, call it good. Typically the first thing I'll do is I'll go to a really freshly flattened 4,000 grit stone and just maybe hit the back very lightly, and then go to my 8,000 grit, hit the back pretty lightly. And then that's it. That's all I ever want to do to the back of a plane iron or chisel, with anything. And from there, you're going to hone the bevel. And as you do that, you're going to raise a burr, and then you're going to remove that by flipping it over on your finest stone at the very end of sharpening, and remove the burr by running the back against it. So that's why you need that super flat. And really, it's just a one-time only sharpening or polishing of the back. Call it good, and don't hit that with anything other than that finest stone to finish up with. So, and in terms of sharpness, reflection, I think, can be an indicator, but it's really usability. How does the tool work? How's it plane cut? What kind of a shaving can you pair with a chisel? That's your real indicator of whether you're sharp or not. So, you're good. Hopefully you're still flat, and it just, don't think too much about it and get on to sharpening, and it's probably going to serve you well.
Do you check your blades for sharpness at all when you're sharpening, or do you just trust your system?
For sharpening?
Yeah.
It's, if you still see the burr or feel the rough edge as you're honing, it's a pretty big indicator. But really, it's you got to get the blade, like for a plane iron, you've got to get it in the plane and take a shaving. That's the only way you're going to know. A chisel, go ahead and get a block of pine, clamp it in your vise, and pare the end grain. It should be just glass smooth. And if there's any lines or scratches in the surface, that's an indicator that there's a nick in your blade. It can still be perfectly sharp. And, I'll hit it. And if it's got, there's just a little nick. But if it's like a regular duty chisel, you're good.
Yeah, I move on from that.
Yeah, let's go.
What about you, Barry? Do you do anything to test sharpness?
Out of habit? So like on my straight edges, just out of habit, I'll hit some pine, just like check the end grain. The only time but that being said, I trust the system, it's just kind of perfunctory, or not even perfunctory, just silly for me to check the edge most of the time. The only time where I do it religiously is my carving tools, because I don't have a guide, it's like, did I do the swoopy swoop enough? And you check to see because with carving, one cut's always uphill and the other one's downhill. I just want to make sure that both edges of the blade are cool. But to go back to Mike's point about like Lee Nielsen blades, Veritas blades, you trust them. Like that's one of the reasons I started buying premium tools, is because I'm so tired of messing with backs
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to overwork anything, So I know Lee Nielsen does a wonderful job, ditto Veritas. And I like the ability to trust them and just kiss the back instead of like checking it with a straight edge like I would when I would buy antique tools, and then working it some more.
Yeah, for me, the mirror finish is definitely not proof of anything because it can be mirror and rounded. It could be, it just, I've got that grinder right over my shoulder that I use for my gouges, and it does a great job because there's a rest that you can hold the chisel at a perfect angle. But you're coming right off of, I think that might be like a 180 belt or something like that. And then you go to the buffing wheel with it. And it's like, yeah, it's shiny when it's done. But it's a carving gouge. And most of my gouge work is fairly rough. Yeah. So I don't care. It does a great job for what I'm doing. But I'm not using that on my chisels. I'm not using that on my plane blades because it's going to be shiny, but I don't think it's going to hold up, or I don't think it's going to be rolled or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody still shave arm hair?
I used to. It's kind of satisfying. You see little things popping up, but the thing is, it's like that term razor sharp. You actually have to be a lot sharper than a razor. I mean, a razor, no, because really a razor blade under magnification, it's a really serrated edge. And that serrated edge can shave hair really well. So the same thing, you can have, relatively speaking, a serrated edge on a chisel or plane iron, and it's going to grab the hairs and cut them off as well. So it's fun. Do it. It's great. You walk around that little, bare patches of honor. You're walking through Home Depot and you just hope someone notices your arm hair missing. It's like, hey, good job, man. But that has not happened yet. So I've stopped doing that. So
there was a time that I bought a loop and I would inspect my blade. I forgot
about that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's dangerous, man.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
It's bad. That's too much information.
It's too much information. It's frightening. And now that was a good example of trust the system.
Yeah.
I think I bought it right after I dropped a bunch of money on some stones at the time. And I was inspecting the blade after each grit. And at first I was like, what did I just spend $500 on? This looks like crap. And then I go to the next one and be like, okay, it's a little bit better. And by the time I got done with the process, it was as you expected it to be. But it's pretty shocking what you see under a loop.
Yeah.
I break it out every now and then just for kicks. But yeah, I don't recommend it.
Sharpening is a rabbit hole you can fall down. And I know people who have fallen down the sharpening rabbit hole. Some of them are still there.
Still in the forums.
but there's, it's, to me, that it comes down to, I know I'm not as sharp as other people. Like, I know that 100%, but I'm sharp enough to do the work that I want to be doing. And I think that's a really important distinction.
Well, for me, I knowingly made a trade-off between, I went to a system that was not as fine. Knowing that I was going to gain what I needed in convenience to just get back to work. And when I am done sharpening a chisel, it does the job I need it to. And I'm not going to say I'm Pekovich sharp. I'm not going to say I'm Garrett Hack sharp. I'm whatever. But I have stopped obsessing over it, and I was obsessing over it. I had all the glassback Shapton stones. I had a little case I made for my Shapton stones. I had the loop, and for me, I just needed to dial it back and go to like Diamond Paste and MDF and like just say, you're cool, man. Just get to work. So, all right. Let's see. It's time for a segment. So, who wants to go first? Barry? It's been a while for you.
Yeah,
what are you working on, by the way? You posted an Instagram picture that was like really interesting. There was
with a
some
really
painted-
great caption.
Well, there's always a great caption.
When people take me
But-
seriously, I'm like, oh no.
The length
don't
of a
do
draw
that.
bore pin is directly related to the strength of the joint.
Right.
And you had that was
Like, are your joints loose? Make the drawboard pin longer. Duh. It's like, no, that project is from years ago. That's the tower rack.
Oh, that's
Like,
right.
The
Okay.
Carnarvon Sawhorse tower rack with Follansbee carving.
That's painted. So like you've been like that towel rack or whatever is painted and carved, and it's different. Maybe there's somebody else out there doing that particular style of like Follansbee style carving that is painted. But
I took my cues from Follansbee and like green woodworkers because I really like carving and I like painting and like
rusted pulchritude and
and so like the green woodworkers mix of carving and painting speaks to me. If that was in a movie, I'd be wicked distracted. I wouldn't even remember anything, you know. Yeah. Wait, segment?
Yeah. Oh yeah. What are you working or no, not what are you working on? What's your segment?
It's grab bag still, right?
Yes.
Steel oyster.
Yeah, I think so.
This is a weird one for me, but it's my tool chest. And it didn't dawn on me until the other day. So I've had this thing 5 years now. And it dawned on me the other day as I'm sitting on it, chopping dovetail waste out, that this thing has been a very silent partner for 5 years. So I built it because I was working out of my parents' garage. Like I was sharing a shop space with my dad. I just wanted a place to put some tools. So I made a very basic tool chest with sliding tills. It's nothing like it's nailed. It's a 6-board chest, nothing fancy. And then every time I've moved, it gets filled up with tools and it helps with that. And then it gets unloaded. For a while, I was using it for all my router crap. I was using it as just kind of like a throwaway spot, which was a bad idea, but like miscellaneous tools, I didn't know where else to put them or I didn't use them that often, went in the box and forgotten about. And now it's all my finishing supplies. And like one tier of the tills are paint, the other one are brushes and other stuff, and then like paints and oils and stuff in the bottom main compartment. And I can sit on it. It is perfect height for sitting and doing layout, chopping waste, very light duty carving, and it's on wheels. And so I can just pull it out and put it away. And so it's this thing that is totally like, I'm not necessarily proud of it. You know, it's just like a thing that I made out of necessity. And it's really become a boon, like very quietly become a boon. And I love it. Like I never want to be without a tool chest because of the versatility and because I get to put my butt somewhere, you know? So tool chest 110% for the past few months, honestly.
That has me thinking about, I built my father a tool chest years and years ago. And as practice for it, I built myself one and it's just junky, whatever, poplar, plywood bottom, but dovetailed and they're bad. But it is the thing that my son stands on to operate the bandsaw.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's become this thing that's just tucked away right next to the bandsaw now. I only have one handle on it, so we can just pick it up and pull it out and lay it down. If you really need to stand up tall, you lay it on its other side and you get a little bit more height for something else. And it has quickly become like, I'm strongly attached to this now because it's just, 20 years from now, he's going to be taller than me, but I'll always be like, you used to stand on this tool chest, you know? So.
Yeah, like I don't think I'm a tool chest person, like I don't want to fit everything into it, but I want one around, you know? It's just.
Well, I've also been thinking about duplicating this size tool chest because it's a small tool chest to hold camera equipment to bring on shoots so that if I need to stand up a little bit, I've got a couple of different heights to stand at. And so
that's brilliant. Because the number of times I've been on a shoot and been like, do you have anything for me to stand on? It's like,
you want to go next, or I'm going to steal something from a recent shoot, so I'll go.
Please do.
And all of you, or you two, both of you, should be very aware of this one. It is Tom McLaughlin's stick with a nail on it. To square up a case.
I literally was just looking at photos of that this morning and choosing photos for Barry's article. That was a brilliant thing.
That's just one of those. I've been really trying to be good about using my own techniques and everything, but that's one that, wow. So
stick with a nail.
A stick with a nail in it. And like, I love the fancy squaring sticks, like Adrian Ferrazzuti squaring sticks. Have you seen those?
Oh, they're beautiful.
Mm.
He's making like ebony and brass squaring sticks, and they're gorgeous. Nice. It's Adrian Ferrazzuti, right? But I love all of the different tools that people have for squaring, and then McLaughlin pulls out a stick with a nail in it, and the nail just shoves right into the corner of the case. On the far corner, makes a mark, and then just does the other diagonal. And the brilliant thing is, it's in the video that is published as we speak, this afternoon. But the brilliant thing is, if the case is off, he can just make a second tick mark where the other diagonal lines up, and then you split the difference, make a third tick mark, and just move the case until you're at that tick mark, and you're done. And it is, check out the video, the masterclass video that I'll link to, but it is one of those simple but brilliant genius things. A stick with a nail in it.
Cool. Very cool.
I forgot about that splitting the difference thing, because like stick with a nail in it is cool, but like I have pinchy rods. Why do I need something else? But then you're constantly like going back and forth as you square up the case. Like, wait, do I have it now? How about now? How about now? But if you split the difference, you're pretty darn close, if not dead on. Like,
right.
Well, and if you watch the video, now everybody watches it, you're insiders. It's very obvious that Tom McLaughlin built more than one of these cases.
Yeah.
Because he's got the line on it where it's supposed to be, and he pulls it up, he goes, oh, it's over here. And he takes a tick mark and he does the next thing. He goes, oh, it's right there. I'm just going to line it up to that middle line that was already there. And it was very, pulling the casserole out of the oven as you put one in. But yes, that's how shoots happen sometimes. There's more than one of these pieces that is made. And the first one of his was perfectly square the first time. And the second one, probably because of something Barry did, was wrong.
Square to that one. It was
And Barry makes his video debut on this one.
I do. I help him glue that out of square, and then he has to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait till you hear all the bleeped out curses he yells at me.
What you got, Mike?
I don't know what to call this. It's not a smooth move. It's sort of verification of knowledge that you already knew but took for granted. So that's this segment of the week of all time. The project I'm working on now, it's a project I've been thinking about making for a number of years, and that I do, a variation of number of wall cabinets that have like combination of doors and drawers and open spaces. In fact, there's one behind Barry's head that he made on the wall. And these cabinets, they're always there. I think that, they're interesting with all of their components, but every time I look at them, it looks like it would scale up really well to like a bookcase size. So I thought, well, I wanted to have like one big project in the book I'm working on. And so I thought, okay, this is my excuse to do this. So I'm working on this piece. So in my mind, it's like, I did the layout. I got everything I wanted, and now I can just make my pieces. And I know how to make this because I've made this thing a dozen times. Like every component I'm super familiar with. And then all of a sudden you have this 52-inch long board by 13 inches wide. And it's just like, I have to cut dovetails in this and connect it to a 32-inch long board, which is 13 inches wide. And all of a sudden it's just like, this is a different animal. And it's that notion that scale affects the process in both ways. Like working super small, like in boxes, that's super fussy and super demanding because you're working at such a high level of accuracy because like a gap which is small in a chest of drawers can be giant in the corner of a mitered box. So working small has its own issues in terms of scale. And then obviously working big, it's just, that's right. This isn't just the same thing. This is a completely different animal because the scale is different and it just demands a different approach and different rethinking of absolutely everything. So I went into this thing thinking this is a known quantity, and I actually sort of had to scratch my head at every single step of the process and come up with, a lot of interesting ideas. Also realized that a big piece can make my shop feel really small, really fast.
I was just going to ask that because when you posted the first photo, I was like, oh, wait, what's going on? That's huge. And then as it's been going, I've just been going, where is he keeping this? Because you have a nice sized shop, but you have a lot of stuff in there. You have a lot of things that go along with running a magazine and doing classes and all of that stuff. You do not have room for a big piece.
No. And the piece isn't maybe as big as it might look in the photos because I tend to shoot it from below eye level to keep the parallax, the perspective nice and square. Because if you're shooting a piece from above, it's going to look skinnier at the bottom than the top. And I hate that. So I tend to be shooting almost at waist high. And because of that, it looks perhaps at first glance of the photo that the top of this case is like way above eye level. And it's not. It just looks better when you shoot it down there. So, but that scale, that was a really tough challenge. I probably spent more time designing this piece than in anything in recent memory. I went through probably easy 40 or 50 iterations in Illustrator once I had the basic form because of all the different door and drawer combinations. And then you get this thing that looks really good, small on the page. And then you sort of plug it into the size of piece you want to make. And all of a sudden you either have like 14-inch high drawers or like 1-inch high drawers, by the time you scan, all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I was envisioning something that was 8 feet high, not 4.5 feet high. So it's weird how in your mind you have a sense of scale. And so you're designing to that. But then when you look at the actual space you're looking at, it's so different. So,
oddly enough, Philadelphia Highboys are just regular furniture that just got out of hand.
Yes. Yeah. It has to be that high, even though I have to stand on a ladder to, to the top.
Let's put a drawer up there too.
Yeah.
So my question is, what was the process like getting the thickness of the parts down? Because it's like you could get the dimensions, you knew how big you wanted it to be, but then all of a sudden, like if you're used to working in 5/8 of an inch boards or something like that, is like, do you just automatically scale it up to a certain amount, or that's where it could really get tedious, I think.
That's where, a direct scaling up, I probably would have been dealing with close to a 2-inch thick case sides, just, so there, is all relative. I think I was able to get the case sides, pretty close to 1 inch thick, starting with 5/4 stock, which really, side by side a cabinet of the same size with 3/4 inch sides versus 1 inch thick sides, there's a big visual difference. So I knew I needed more mass, so I got the full inch thick. It's all made out of ash. So that's the other thing is, these things are so heavy to move around. And it's just like, oh, I don't want to, do I really want to lift that on my bench? No, I'm just going to do that right here. I can do that.
You need a tool chest to sit on and do things.
Yeah.
See?
So it's fun.
All right, let's take a quick break. This episode is sponsored by Maverick Abrasives. Maverick is a family-run company that's been making sanding belts and discs for woodworkers in the USA for 30 years. With Maverick, you're buying factory direct, so you're likely to save a lot of money. I just looked around my shop at the various abrasives that I use, and I did the math. If I bought everything directly from Maverick, I would save around 40% on my sanding discs and belts. Maverick has all of the popular size belts and discs in stock on their website, but they can also make any custom sizes that you might need. Check out their website at maverickabrasives.com or give one of their owners, Garrett, a call at 714-646-3299 and use the code FINEWOODWORKING. That's one word, FINEWOODWORKING, for 10% off your order. Again, that's maverickabrasives.com and the code is FINEWOODWORKING.
Hey, Shop Talk Live fans, take a deeper dive into woodworking topics when you join the Fine Woodworking Unlimited community. From in-depth project guides, step-by-step plans, tips, and techniques, you'll find everything you need to master your craft. Try Unlimited now and enjoy a 14-day free trial. Find out more at finewoodworking.com/members.
Question number 3 is from Kevin. I think Kevin has an agenda.
I love this one.
I like Kevin. Yeah.
Hello, Ben, Mike, Barry, Anissa, and or whoever is sitting in this week. Which of these have you ever actually done? Reversed a hide glue joint. Adjusted the height of shelves on a bookcase after you filled it with books and knickknacks, like Mike's extensive collection of Precious Moments figurines. Used the golden ratio to set proportions on a design. Thanks as always, and stay safe and healthy.
So what's the larger question he's getting at? There's certain woodworking fallacies that we buy into, but don't necessarily put into practice.
I would even say they're rules.
Yeah, like conventional wisdom. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Up until 3 days ago, I have never taken apart a hide glue joint.
I've done it kind of once. On that red thing, I had a corner that didn't close up. And so I used hide glue. I heated it up, reclosed the joint, and it's not perfect, but I mean, that could just be me, but it did. I've done it once.
So I've neither used hide glue nor disassembled a piece made from hide glue. Yeah. So Ben, now that you have,
it's really nice. So when we were in what will be the new shop, there was a chair there, right? And I saw it and I was like, hey, I'm taking this chair, and
yes.
I have proceeded to take it apart. It might get put back together at some point. It might not, but it was a real learning experience taking apart, like big time. The first thing that I learned is that the chair's probably 80 years old or something like that. And for all intents and purposes, I could have put a new, rush. No, not rush. What was the seat?
The circle weavy thing.
Huh?
The circle weavy thing, and then it's got the routed in channel.
Yeah.
Caning.
I could have put a new cane seat on it, and it would have been a chair. But I decided, let's see, how far I can get this apart. And one thing that I learned from doing that was, and Mike, you have said this many times, but like, don't worry about what's going to happen to a piece 100 years from now. Like, that's somebody else's problem. Don't like have that in the forefront of your mind, because it's too much of a burden. Yes. And so this is the third chair I've taken apart recently. I took apart a couple of my parents to fix, and that was a task that I really wanted to nail. This one was interesting because it was just, let's see if I can get it entirely apart. I did break a spindle, and so I'll have to remake that, but getting the hide glue joint apart with warm water and heat was doable. By the third one, I got good at it. And I'm willing to bet that people like Freddie Roman and Patrick Edwards are really good at it. And it is like a task that they just do. But I was amazed how sturdy this chair already was, given how many of the joints were really loose to begin with as soon as I started taking them apart. And it really made me respect mortise and tenon joinery. It made me respect good chair design. It made me respect the maker of this chair, and that respect will probably mean that I put it back together at one point. But it really was, it was a huge learning experience, to be honest with you. If anyone is ever, like, if you find an old chair that is being thrown out and you want to just spend a night or two of fun in your shop, try and take it apart as much as you can. There's so much to be taught from old chairs. But cool. So yes, it's easily done.
Yeah, the way I've been using hide glue for years, and I use it when I can, like unless I need something rushed or it's going to Florida and that awful humidity. And I do it the same way I use a seatbelt, where it's like, this is a just in case kind of thing. I'm not future proofing it for 200 years from now.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like I'm future proofing it for tomorrow, Barry.
I use hide glue on my ukulele backs because I need to take them apart, or one of them I have to take apart. So I will be doing that, but I don't do it because it sounds better, like some people say. But okay, so reverse the hide glue joint. So maybe adjusted the height of shelves on a bookcase. Nope.
I have gotten away from. I do not do multiple holes in case sides for shelves for myself. In fact, I just tack on a little cleat on each side that the shelf rests on. And if I need to move the shelf, I can pry off the cleat because I use the 23 gauge pin nails and just re-nail them somewhere else. However, if I'm making something for a client, I'll do the hole where I think the shelf needs to go. And then I'll do a pair of holes, one set of holes, maybe 1.5 inches above and maybe another set 1.5 inches below that. Just because, I'm not living with it. Someone's going to have to live with this for a long time. I don't know exactly what they're going to put there. So I think it's probably less about adjusting them multiple times and probably more about getting them into the place you want it to begin with. And then also when you're moving, it's nice to take the shelves off.
Yeah,
that I've reorganized my shelves a fair amount. And so I like having them being able to break down because I do move a good bit. But also, like, I have high book turnover. And at some point, I started getting into more graphic novels and art books, which are much different than, like, paperback, in terms of size.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I like the flexibility. That being said, I like Mike's idea. That's like one set of holes above, one below. Because the bookshelves I have, they have the holes like every 2 inches. Sorry, I'm looking at them.
Yeah.
That's a lot of holes. Like, even to the point where, like, I'm not sure if I have the pegs lined up. Like, with the shelf on, it's like
there was one piece that I built. I built a it was like a changing table kind of thing when we had our son, and we had like the cloth baskets, like the cloth IKEA baskets, and I sized the shelves so we could have 3 rows of the cloth baskets for diapers and wipes and all that stuff. And I did do holes, but I did the three shelf holes, and then I did one straight in the center so that I could, when we ditched those baskets, I could take one shelf out, and it was sized for books. Oh. So it was like kind of like a very, very specific design of just going from 3 shelves for 3 small shelves to 2 shelves.
Right.
But I don't think I've ever moved. And yeah, I used to do them all the time. Never moved them. Set them to the size of LPs and move on. The golden ratio.
Should I start, Mike?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
No, but yes. I've used the silver ratio twice, which I learned about in a video game.
Didn't know it was a thing.
I didn't. I'm playing this video game, and all of a sudden they talk about like this ratio used in Japanese temple building. So between the first question and this one, I think I'm saying video games are the new fine woodworking magazine. No, but so I've used it as a starting ground. It's like, like I know a piece needs to fit this space, but how else? Or like, I know the height. How do I want the width to be? Or I know the length, whatever. And I will adjust from there as I see fit. Or if I want to put a shelf, so I use it for my coffee table, the silver ratio. I'm pointing because it's right behind me. I put a shelf and I'm like, well, where do I want this to be? And
what
when
is
I do
the ratio?
It's 1 to 1.414. And I think I use 1.4.
So 2 to 3.
And I'll round up or down as I see fit. Like I'm not doing the like setting a pair of proportional dividers. It'd be like, oh, it comes to 1.2. I'm going 1.25 maybe. Or like, but it gives me a starting ground from which to play. Yeah. And I'll move around from there. Like I know I like how this looks in general, but do I want to, I don't feel beholden to it. Yeah. I will tweak it as necessary, but I like it as a starting ground.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike.
So, I mean, and then the golden ratio can be simplified to, I think, roughly 3 to 5. It's like 1.63 to 1 or something like that. No, I don't. I think I think we do it intuitively because it's a shape that our eye sees it. It just resolves itself as being, think of it as like a neutral shape, not the ideal, like, oh, that's it. Why is that so beautiful? It just feels either not skinny and tall or not squat and short. It just feels, to our eye, it feels neutral. And, I think a lot of times I intentionally break that rule if I want something to have a really linear, say, tall feel or short and wide feel. I'll intentionally, go with a shape which is, narrower than that ideal, and it will give that sense. The same thing if you want something with a little bit more mass and a little bit more weight. If you take that golden rectangle and you just shorten it down, it's just going to have this mass to it. So I think of it as not this ideal, but more of this neutral starting point. And if it just looks nice and that subdivides into the size shelves and drawers I need to hold all the stuff I want, that's pretty cool. Trust your eye.
You design sometimes with the piece that will be held in mind.
Yeah, right.
What's that like? You'll start with a tea kettle or something, right?
Yeah, or that's the socks and toilet paper theorem, where if it's got to hold a roll of toilet paper and it's like a half an inch too, shallow of a cabinet, and that door kind of pops open and you keep shoving it, that's not a good size. So, and then so there's the object that needs to be supported or contained. And then there's also ergonomics in relation to the human scale. And so for me, the width of the box with the lid, it needs to be able to, if it's one-handed, it needs to fit the width of your hand comfortably so that you can pick it up with one hand or lift the lid off with one hand. And then if it starts to get too big, to just understand that becomes a two-handed box. So, so the width of your hand is one constraint, and if it's holding pencils, that's another constraint. Like a box for pencils, if it's too long and you open it up and there's an inch gap at the end of the pencils to the edge of the box, that looks horrible. It just looks like, oh, I found a box to put pencils in. And the same thing, it's like, if like you have 40 pencils in there, but there's still like 1.5 inches of space to the top of the box, that looks really bad too. So I think it needs to be big enough to hold what it needs to hold. I think it also needs to be size small enough to contain just that, so it feels like it fits. Like you're talking about the tool chest. You have this little space for your hand plane and it goes in. It doesn't get wedged in, but it doesn't rattle. It's just that perfect fit. I think, that notion extends itself to everything. So, and that really resolves super cleanly to any, predefined ratio. And one thing that was pretty informative. Will Neptune, who's massive genius, massively informed scholar of period furniture and period furniture design, wrote this brilliant piece in the furniture journal?
Pins and Tails.
American Period Furniture comes out. Anyway, he wrote this entire treatise about the circles of different diameters and how he breaks down these iconic pieces and shows how every single component can be aligned to this sort of device using circles of different diameters in combination with each other and subdividing those into smaller circles to come up with this fully resolved piece. And I said, okay, this is really brilliant. And it's really apparent this is what they did. But, what's the takeaway for someone who designs furniture in terms of using this? And his take was that it's a really, really powerful tool, but you have to be really, really knowledgeable about it in order to put it to use, in order to utilize it. So I think a lot of the proportioning systems, fall under that, in that if you are, if all you're doing is architectural design, from day one, and you develop these tools and proportion devices to help you, work out spaces and stuff, they're going to be useful. I think for a furniture designer, if we design 4 or 5 pieces of furniture a year, I don't think there's any real proportioning design system that we're going to be able to put to use in a way to really affect something which is super, super resolved to that level. I think if anything, the bad thing is that, number one, it can become a constraint. Like, oh, I can't be any taller, or I have to break it up and create a rectangle of this, so that has to be there. And then the other thing is it matches that ratio, so it has to look good, right? It's no, it can look really bad. And it's only there. It's a means, it's a device to get to something that looks the way you want it to look. And unless you know how to use a proportioning system effectively, I think it can be a stumbling block for that. So I recommend just drawing a lot, looking at tons and tons of things, using your eye, mock up, give yourself a chance to look at something. And if you're not happy with it, change it super quickly without a lot of effort so you can see how that might look. The worst thing is to build a piece of furniture and you just stare at it forever and something bothers you by it. So you'll know it when you see it, and give yourself a chance to see it before you build it. That's it.
Before I ever built any furniture, I built acoustic treatments in my last life. And the first time I came across the golden ratio was I was building an isolation box for a guitar amp. Basically, I was living in a residential neighborhood, wanted to be able to have a 100-watt guitar amp screaming and not bother the neighbors. So I built a 700-pound box that broke down into sections and bolted together and everything. And I had a room dedicated to housing this box. But when I was designing it, I tried like crazy to do it with the golden ratio in mind, because somebody told me, oh, that will acoustically sound the best. And it turned out that would change the constraints, and I wouldn't be able to design it with X numbers pieces of plywood. I would have to double all of my plywood orders. And the cost of the box went from like $700 to $1,400. And I remember it was my first time of like, you know what, this ratio just has to go. It's holding me back. And the functionality constraints need to be first and foremost. It's like, I need a thing to hold this TV, or to put the TV on, or to put the thing on. That comes first. Design the thing, and then it needs to look good to you. And then if it happens to fit into your things, like you said, then fine.
Yeah. You brought up the great point of the ultimately most important proportioning system, and that is, are the pieces going to fit on a sheet of plywood? Right? I mean, because it's like you start
4:8 ratio.
Yes, you start looking at kitchen cabinet parts, and it's like 23 and a half inches by, whatever. It's like, shoot, that's really smart, because the first thing you do, I want my cabinets 25 inches deep. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. We're over an hour with just the 3 questions. So I think we'll come back to the 4th next time. Everybody's still rolling, right?
Looking good.
Yeah.
All right. I will not ask that all through all of the coming episodes, I promise you. We have some listener comments. This one is from the Woodworking Labor Lawyer. I'm a subscriber to the magazine, a South Philly basement woodworker, and this podcast completes the trifecta. I only use hand tools. Row home neighbors appreciate it, and your in-depth discussion on techniques, maintenance, etc. is incredible. Thank you for this great work. And then from...
Wait, for the South Philly guy. I'm wearing a Wawa hoodie, buddy. Just for you.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
Looks
It's
more
not for
like
you, New
South
Englanders.
Florida.
Yeah, they're in Florida now. What is that? Which I'm very grateful for when I go down and visit.
Still have no idea what you're
It's
talking
like a Cumberland Farms, but like 1,000 times better.
Wow. Is it Wawa?
Yeah.
Oh, I like sheets. Let's see. This one is from Sir Blitzy.
Yes.
Dudes and Anissa talking shop. The best pod for woodworking. Viva la Pekovic!
Okay.
Can't top that one.
No, except for this episode. This was pretty rough.
Does anybody have any random recommendations? Mine is to get a jug of water for your shop. If you do not have running water in your shop, get like a 2-gallon jug of water and just leave it out there. And it's the best.
For hydration purposes or like
hydration purposes, for quenching blades, for if you're grinding, for damping a rag to wipe glue up, to all sorts of things. I multiple times a day use my jug of water, and every single time I'm just super happy I have it.
Another video game related one. There's a rapper named Samus, Sammus, and she's incredible. But there's one of her albums, so she's named after a character from Metroid series, and one of her albums is has Metroid samples, and it's not gimmicky at all. Like, it is solid music. So Samus.
Okay, you'll send me a link.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mike, you got anything?
Nothing.
All right. Well, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have any questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. I'm going to regret this, but please, everyone, stop listening to the episodes 3 months after they're released and then talk to me as though we just talked about them.
I love it. I say keep doing it.
I say keep doing it. Yeah, just keep it coming. We can
just send Ben
that.
a timestamp. Throw him a bone.
Sure.
Tell me the episode. That's what I asked.
Okay.
What are you listening to? I love hearing from people, from listeners.
That's the true Ben.
But I gotta know what you're talking about. All right, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thank you for listening.
If you love this podcast, you'll love Fine Woodworking Unlimited. Access more than 40 years of articles, how-to videos, and project plans designed to take your craft to the next level. Check it out.